South Carolina. Brad Sigmon chose to die by firing squad, the first in the state.
The condemned inmate was pronounced dead at 6:08 p.m. Sigmon was the first inmate to die by firing squad in the United States in 15 years. He was sentenced to death for killing David and Gladys Lark with a baseball bat in Greenville County in 2001.
We have team coverage tonight as we learn how Brad Sigmon's final moments played out. A WYFF News 4 journalist was one of those witnesses.
Our Nate Stanley is in Columbia with a recap on Sigmon's death by firing squad.
Real quick, we can talk about it when we get done here, but 24 years between the time of the crime to execution, and we could talk about why that is, and that is actually a good thing to let that play out. But yeah, we'll talk about it in a second.
Prices of bullets were a lot cheaper back then.
All three witnesses described the execution as quick, and according to one witness, a WYFF News 4 team member, Sigmon almost seemed calm in his final moments.
I did see a splash of blood when the bullets entered his body. It was not a huge amount, but there was a splash that you could see kind of protrude from the wound.
Those were Brad Sigmon's final moments as witnessed by WYFF 4 News team member Anna Dobbins. His execution was the first time a firing squad was used in South Carolina.
His arms flexed. There was something in his midsection that moved. I'm not necessarily going to call them breaths. I don't really know, but there was some movement that went on there for 2 or 3 seconds. It was very fast.
Sigmon was sentenced to death for the 2001 double murder of his ex-girlfriend's parents, David and Gladys Lark, with a baseball bat in Greenville County. The Lark's daughter, Renee, told us David was taking plates of food down to Brad the week before he killed her parents. She also says her parents were always helping people out when they could. Dobbins says Sigmon did not appear fearful moments before he died.
I couldn't see his whole face, but I did not pick up on anything in his expression that would have indicated fear.
The State Department of Corrections confirmed Sigmon was killed by 3.308 caliber bullets fired from long rifles.
From the point where the curtain opened, really, it was a very somber, quiet room outside of the shots being fired.
Witnesses say Sigmon's attorney read his final statement that said, in part, "Remember the words of Jesus, John 7:19. Did not Moses give you the law? Yet none of you keep with the law. We are now under God's grace and mercy." And you can read Brad Sigmon's full final statement on WIFF4.
I'm not interested in that.
Wow, what a description, huh?
Yeah, they really went at it. Not something that has happened a lot. Yeah, I don't know how they picked I remember, who was that guy like in 1977, Steve? Gary something. I was a kid and he did he chose to be killed by firing squad. Remember? And they had do you remember that in 77? Was like first.
There was one in Utah that was executed by firing squad. I think he was the last one.
Right. Yeah, that's quite a description there. How detailed everything was.
Yeah, and he chose that method. There was 3 methods, and that's the method he chose. The other 2 options were the lethal injection and electrocution.
I just wonder.
I think I would take a firing squad based on those other 2 also, with what I've heard stories on the other 2.
Well, what do you think about the fact that when I posted that, I mean, there was an overwhelming number of people that were asking why it wasn't on pay-per-view or why they couldn't tune in. Why isn't it public? Why can't people watch that want to? And of course, I could see we don't,
because we're not Rome with the gladiators. I don't know.
Well, they might have been able to recover some of the money they spent keeping them alive for the last 20 some odd years.
If it were going to happen and make it legal, the federal government, this current version might make that into a thing. Who knows?
Yeah. They'll privatize that.
Yeah.
Well,
be on X. They'll be on X. You buy it on X. You can only watch it on X.
There's an anti-death penalty movement. Obviously, they're protesting, and they protest any capital punishment.
Sure.
And I kind of have a unique idea. If you don't want a person to be executed, we should have where you can opt in or opt out on your driver's license. if I murdered, I don't want the guy who killed me to be executed.
I remember that.
And if you don't opt in or opt out, then you default. You want the person who kills you to be executed.
It's like the donor. It's like the
little donor. Oh, you took my joke, my little donor thing. Here we are laughing about it. Yeah. Well, there's religious issues, and then
you satisfy the anti-capital punishment people. Okay, because I subscribe to the belief that the only person that can really grant forgiveness is the person who was trespassed against, right? The person who was murdered, and that person can't because they're dead. So but you can opt in or opt out of the death penalty by saying, if I get murdered, don't execute the person that murdered me.
Yeah, there's arguments on the other side of it, but we know the reason why it took this long generally is to let all the appeals go out. And we've learned as a history in the United States that sometimes innocent people have been wrongly executed, and that's why the appeals process is so long. I mean, look at the full what's his name right now, the Scott Peterson, right? He's got this thing going on with some sort of possible reopening of the case because of some
the
Menendez brothers too, but that was more of a self-defense, right? And we got to kind of give that one. I don't think capital was ever on the table for that one because that was more of kind of like allegations against their parents,
right?
But Scott Peterson definitely, this is one where they Rich and Alan Davis, right? The obviously these horrible people,
right?
And they just play it out for years and years. But now I think there's no more death penalty in California.
Sometimes accountability never does come. Sometimes
right. But the appeals process weeds out all the possibilities of any sort of getting wrong. And there has been malicious prosecution, especially in areas of the South and on the East Coast over the years, where they have convicted the wrong people and executed them. And in some cases, it does happen. So I understand the movement of not to have a death penalty at all. I have no problem with someone sitting in a 6x6 cell for the rest of their life. And I don't want to have the visitation. I don't want them to have the right to get married and marry their love letters.
They can't take the Roomba dance classes.
Yeah, exactly. But that's just me. That's just my opinion. Wow, interesting. Yeah, that's So I was going to ask you about the comments. A lot of comments on there, Scott. Go over them again. Besides,
a lot of comments about people asking why it's not. How come they don't air it? I mean, people refer to it as pay-per-view. So I think what they're saying is that they'd be willing to pay to watch it. It could be morbid. I probably wouldn't be interested in watching it unless it was something that unless it was somebody who directly affected my life.
We've all seen people die in front of us. I don't want to have to watch it. I don't want.
Exactly.
I think though, Scott, Mark, is that those comments are just a manifestation of the frustration that people have with these cases dragging on for 25, 30 years, and it's just it gets to the ridiculous that they drag on so long.
Yeah. I think they've said what were the statistics? I think in California, of so many people on death row, if they were to execute one person a month, it'd take like 70 years or something.
I think about people like Mark Klass and John Walsh that had to go through this horrible situation, and I can't put my, I don't want to be in their shoes, obviously, and so I have my thoughts and my own beliefs and the death penalty and stuff like that, but I understand someone's grief and revenge and just closure, I get it. And then
it makes it more difficult when you take politicians who use it as for political traction one way or another, and for example, in the people say that California was lenient on the death penalty, but the voters voted for it. I think like 3 times now that they approved that the California voters want the death penalty, but the problem was not so much. California was spending millions of dollars. The attorney general trying to get the death penalty enforced. But the Supreme Court, the appeals court district, federal appeals court, California, Oregon, Nevada, we fall into one district where we
also with the San Antonio Police Department. There's
Uh-oh.
critical incident.
I'm sorry, I don't know why this is doing it.
Oh, so anyway, yeah, so we deal with a different appeals court than Texas deals with, and their appeals court is pro death penalty, and our appeals court, the federal is anti death penalty.
We can't even seem to in California, we can't even get rid of the daylight savings time and we voted